I was diagnosed with hydradenitis suppurativa, hydradenitis suppurativa, and it's not real clear if it's really a disease, and they claim that it's genetic, and we know that genetics can correct themselves at some point in life. They can also go awry, and it usually happens to people when they hit puberty that do have this disease, and it happened to me, but over the years it had gone away. At different times it would come and go, and occasionally, for some odd reason, I'm getting flare-ups. And there's also bacteria, cocci bacteria, found in the lesions. And it's supposed to be genetic, but I don't have any data or clear evidential measurements of this diagnosis or any valid treatment. It's critical to see the chemistry involved in the treatment and the diagnosis, and we're not seeing any of this. It's supposed to be an inflammatory response involved with necrosis factor, tumor necrosis factor, and it has to do with as a cancer component, a cancer causing component, a cancer risk component with treatment. There's a death component with treatment with a drug called Humira. I'm being treated with doxycycline currently. I'm going to start it tomorrow, and I've been treated with it in the past. It somewhat works, but then occasionally the disease comes back, and I'm wondering if it's really caused by an infectious bacteria, or something else is going on, maybe even criminal suspicion here. And food, it could also potentially be pertaining to a food allergy, because I also have problems with eating bread. Maybe it is genetic, and I don't really understand that that's really what it is. And maybe also it's intermittent, and maybe the conditioning for it, all of the conditions for it, are based on a food allergy or whatever, because they say that it is very related to your diet, your excess heavy weight on your body, cigarette smoking, things like that. Because when I was thin, I was 173 pounds, and I was totally clear, and I stayed clear until I gained a bunch of weight and started smoking pretty heavy, and then the hydradenitis came back. But when I was maintained a thin figure, hydradenitis was gone. I didn't have it. So it's a special condition of chemistry in the body. A lot of disease, it can be related to a state. Okay, so this is a certain state that I'm at that's causing me this illness. If I reduce what I intake and how and what type of chemicals I put in my body, and I stop eating bread, and I do a lot of things like don't drink a lot of caffeine and coffee, and smoke cigarettes, and drink too much soda, and eat too much fat, eat more vegetables and fruits, this seems to get a lot better. And one thing that out of all the over-the-counter things I could possibly try, even cleaning materials, peroxide, you name it, essential oils, calamine lotion, everything, the household cleaners, antibacterial agents, alcohol, hand sanitizer, all kinds of things. Everything I could possibly put on this hydradenitis was unsuccessful except for one thing. and that was Crest whitening fluoride toothpaste. And I layered it on as thick as it could get, like a layer. And I left it on for somewhere around 24 or more hours. It burnt the crap out of me. It got really hot and it burnt. And the hydradenitis just went away. The lesions healed up. And for the most part, they got a lot better. At least 90 to 200% better. Or 190% better. It worked that well. It was Crest whitening fluoride toothpaste. It works great, but it kills the skin. It can kill your skin. It's kind of dangerous, especially if you leave it on too long and you don't wash it off, and you apply the dosage incorrectly. It can be a little dangerous. You may need to apply the layer thinner, because I put it on pretty thick. And you also may not do it as often until the lesions go away, and then test and see if they come back. But do not continue use of toothpaste. So like that was what I did, and I used a microscope to discover that there are cocci bacteria, a lot of cocci bacteria around these lesions. So that's another component. Hydradenitis suppurativa is a nasty disease. It causes a very foul odor. You can have all sorts of odors, and it may be coming from certain bacteria and chemistry in your body, and there may be a production of things that cause odors, including what the bacteria are producing. So it's gross. But I've got that at this moment. I've got this under control, and I do not have any odor. The lesions are mostly going away, and I'm about to start an antibacterial agent called doxycycline. So that's the majority of what makes it heal so far. Toothpaste doxycycline, salicylic acne wash, salicylic acid acne wash, hot showers, just as clean as I could be to try to avoid the bacterial infections, and then watching what I eat and how much I smoke, and especially not drinking too much coffee, because I think caffeine aggravates it. It causes inflammation, and just limiting everything that I do, and reducing the stress, the chemical stress in my body, and even mental stress too. So like this is actually turning out to be a lot better, but I need to work on my health. But I may actually have a genetic disorder. I'm not sure, because I have crooked teeth, and I have a spinal disease as well that's called Sherman's kyphosis. And I have really bad arthritis in my spine and degenerative disc disease as well. It prevents me from being able to work. So like, but my mind is great. I have an IQ anywhere from 114 to 120, and I took an IQ test recently, and I also graduated my GED with a score of up to like 530 on tests that require 145 to pass. A lot of my tests were between 430 and 530, or somewhere around there. No lower than 430, I think. So like I did really well in the GED, and they said I was in the top 20 to 10 percentile in the whole state. And then I understand that geometry and the distribution of particles, geometrical particles, is pretty much the whole beginning phase of quantum physics, and that includes atoms and the particles within and around our stars and our atoms, and all the energy particles and the force carriers the fermions and the bosons, and how chemistry actually works based on electron configuration and positive charge of nuclear charge, how protons and neutrons work, how electricity works, magnetism, gravity, so far photons, other magnetic field particles, electrons, all that. I got that. I studied chemistry, quantum physics. I'm not the greatest quantum physicist in the world. I'm still learning, but I'm pretty smart about all this, and I'm aware of chemical reactions. I've conducted several chemical reactions. I've played with acids and bases, hydrochloric acid. I studied light and metal and copper, different conductive materials. I studied electricity. I know all my charges. I know how to do basically quantum fielding. I know how to track light with X-rays in X-ray crystallography. I know quantum computing. I'm also a computer programmer. I understand qubits and quanta and how that works and how there's particle entanglement. I understand how some of these particles might be doing lots of different things and moving at potentially maybe even faster than the speed of light, even though they claim there's no such thing. But maybe there's differences that none of us can measure, so it's not a valid thing to proclaim if you can't actually show it in an experiment. And that's what's really difficult about making a silly argument about quantum physics, is that if you can't show the actual geometrical quantum physics experiment in a simulation, that it doesn't matter what you say. It's just nothing. It doesn't mean anything without evidence. Evidence is the key to all of this. And there are lots of chemicals and proteins and different chemicals in the body, and what you call complexes and subcomplexes that are genetic and subgenetic, and that pretty much covers the biological life, genetic and subgenetic biological life, with all of the complexes, subcomplexes, molecules, and even single atoms, and the energies that are involved, like particles and light and nuclear energy and all of that, acid, bases, enzymes, you name it, everything that goes into basically all normal relative physics and chemistry and biology. I've studied all of that. I studied for 10 years on my own. I'm self-taught. And this is important. I'm not entirely self-taught. I mean, somebody learned this information before I was born, but I knew it from going to school. I learned about history, and therefore I also know what I know, and I am who I am, and I learned and I taught myself history. So I also have my own ideas and conceptions, quantum conceptions, that help me think about how things actually work. And it's relative to think how things already are said to work. I have an cathode ray tube sitting in my living room, and I'm watching it. It's beaming electrons at the phosphorus screen, and I've measured the electrons and the X-rays that come from cathode ray tube. I've measured different ionizations. I've measured things like that, I studied histology, cell biology, biochemistry, genetics. I know all this stuff. I have a whole library sitting right behind me in the other room. I know ACGT and uracil, guanine, arginine, uh, uh, can't remember what C and T are called. I really know this. I was supposed to know this. It was fresh in my mind. But anyway, I know genetic orders and that they're attached to proteins, and that there's ribosomes and endosomes and different things that make RNA and DNA, and then there's different things that make proteins. There are things called robot molecules that operate in the temperatures of the human body that are robotic, and they are the creators of life. They are essentially protein complexes. They're robotic. There's all sorts of robotic action in the body that's very quantum in nature and at a quantum scope of geometrical figures. And it's essentially simple to understand that it's just particles and how they interact in a very tiny way. And they can act at large in a group in different ways. So I am aware. I'm educated, very educated man, but I don't have a degree yet. I would love to get a degree, but I don't know if that's possible right now. But at the same time, my mathematical abilities, they're pretty basic. I understand algebra, geometry, and calculus. I get it. There are limits. There are three-dimensional figures, and we're calling it three-dimensional, but it's actually multi-dimensional figures, and it has different trigonometric functions and or geometrical functions in general. So it also interacts in the way of algebraic expression, and it formulates series, infinite series, and all different kinds of mathematical concepts that are very difficult to actually explain without deep thinking, because it is in fact a pattern. Math is a distribution pattern of how you arrange variables and how you arrange constants and how you arrange anything in three-dimensional, multi-dimensional scope. Then there's graphing, and then there's producing real three-dimensional action. Three-dimensional quantum math is a lot different than 2D graphs. Okay, 2D graph doesn't represent physics very well. It only represents a number on a 2D graph of what physics might be, but we don't know every detail of three-dimensional particle physics. So there's a lot that we don't know yet, and there are a lot of people, even geniuses, still learning. So it's toss-up. So I hope you enjoy this video, because this is what you need to think about before you begin any real physical career, or even before you learn about life or anything. It is geometrical particles in every potential way that we could possibly imagine. And one other thing, we're not in, I don't think we're in a matrix, because if we were in a matrix, the matrix doesn't work for complex biological components, because it corrodes. Essentially, there's a corrosion component to degrading particle systems. You got to start with basic fundamental principles to understand that of what is going on in reality. The study of reality, and that reality is not a simulation. It's actually just particle interactions, and how that works is very potentially unique in each system that could possibly exist in spectrums. And we may actually have this all divided into a thing called the multiverse. So maybe in some other universe attached to us, some distant galaxies or particles away, is actually, there may be a potential for a matrix or a simulated life, or simulated brain device, or something simulated about biological life. And I always say, you got 5 fingers on your hand. One is for God, magic, nature, or what? God, magic, spirit, nature, machine. And that kind of represents all the theories of life. So, you got to really understand geometry is the key to everything. And how that is intertangled, how it operates, is the function of all reality, even God, even everything. It's geometry. It's the only thing that we could have ever successfully understood about the universe. It's the core of every possible existence in the entire infinite universe. Geometry. Okay? It's algebraic calculus geometry. That is everything to everyone in all possible ways. And that is where I'm going to end this video. Thank you for watching. Peace. Love you. Love me. We'll be good. Peace.